Lower this one down. How you doing? Good. So my name's Blue Waters, and I'm a Two-Spirit elder, formerly living in Toronto, now living in Peterborough. And I was asked to collaborate with SLUTMOTHER to come here. We're going to sing you a couple hand drum songs. And I'm going to tell you a story because as Indigenous people, that's the way we learn, by stories. How did you feel about what you just seen? You can yell it out. Shocking? Angry?
Too long.
Too long? Disturbing? Heartbreaking? It's an everyday occurrence for Indigenous people across Canada that a family member, a loved one, goes missing or is found murdered. And it's been happening since those that arrived on the boats came here. Prior to those that came in the boats, we had all of our own ways of dealing with infractions that people committed. And it wasn't about shaming, it wasn't about locking up people and sending them away where no one was ever rehabilitated. Sadly, we're living in this system today where when someone commits a violent act or someone does something to another person, it takes a long time for them to come before the courts to be heard and find out what happened, and then sentenced away and locked away, and there's no rehabilitation. And this is a constant pattern that keeps repeating itself for Indigenous people. There's a lot of angry Indigenous people because nothing ever gets done. I just finished off 2.5 years with the National Inquiry into the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirited and trans. And the stories are very similar all across Canada of lack of police protection, lack of reports coming from coroners, lack of knowledge and what happened to their loved one, lack of researching and trying to find what happened to their loved ones. So it's an everyday occurrence, and unfortunately it is continuing to happen, and it's going to take all of Canada to correct it. Not just a chosen few or not just a small group of people. And the way I like to think of it is, it's my relative today, maybe your relative tomorrow. So it takes all of us to make sure that we stop that. But that's not what I meant to come and talk to you about, but seeing that on the screen, I wanted to know, how did it impact you, right? Did it have some type of, cause some emotion in you? And what was that emotion? And then now that you've seen it, what are you going to do about it? Right? Because it's one thing to see it, feel it, and then you turn around and leave at the end of the night and go home, and nothing happens. So I think when we see these things, it becomes our responsibility when we get knowledge of the oppression, the racism, the discrimination, the lack of resources, the lack of funding, the lack of finding out what happened to our loved ones becomes all of our problem. And the only way that we can fix it is by working together. And so that's one of the methods that I see that these things happening to come to an end with. How many of you in here have been through the child welfare system? I can't see you, so if you have, make a noise. If you haven't, consider yourself fortunate. I grew up here in Toronto with my grandmother. And how many of you know where Hyde Park is? Yeah? How many of you are older than 50 here?
Yeah.
Not too many. So I'm going to take you back 50 years. 50 years ago in Hyde Park, the water was clear. There were many, many more trees than what there is today. My brother and I grew up in the Hyde Park area, and being Indigenous, there was always the threat of having child welfare come to take you away, because we lived in that time of residential school and 60 scoop. And so there was always that fear of being taken away from child welfare. But it was a wonderful time to be a young person in, because there was no violence like we have today. Young kids could go to the park and be at the park for days, and no one would ever bother you. You didn't worry about being abused by someone, being accosted by somebody, from going missing. That didn't exist. So we grew up in Hyde Park, and the word in the Cree language for grandmother is cookum. So our grandmother, our cookum, worked 2 jobs to take care of her grandchildren, myself and my brother. And so we pretty much knew to be home when the street lights came on. Have any of you here had to be home by the street lights? Yeah. Maybe your parents told you to be home by the street lights, because that's what they grew up with. So we could pretty much go anywhere we wanted to. The TTC was 10 cents, you know, so that was pretty cheap back then. Any kid could go into the store and get a package of cigarettes to take home to somebody, to which you went to afterwards and stole for yourself. So we grew up in the park, and we learned traditional ways from our grandmother and understandings. And I remember from the time I was 6 to 8, growing up with my brother there, and you know, coming home after school. We were the original latchkey kids with no keys, right? Because nobody ever locked the doors, right? But you came home alone, right? And you didn't have to worry about anything. Our back door lock was a knife through the door frame. That, you know, when you went to bed, you put it in the door frame, and that was it, right? And it was only on your back door, because you weren't afraid of somebody coming in your front door. I have no idea why, but you weren't afraid of that. We had telephones. They were black, very heavy. They had rotary dials on them, and you weren't allowed to use them in case you had a phone call. The phone never rang, but you couldn't use it anyways, because in case you had a phone call. So it's a whole different time period. So we would come home after school, and so we'd be hungry. And being taught at a young age that you weren't allowed to use the stove, we took that serious, right? Like, that was the only rule we had. You're not allowed to use the stove and be home when the streetlights come on. Other than that, you could do what you wanted to do. So we would get tired of opening up cans that we bought from a store that was down on Queen Street called Usher's, which had clearance food. So from stores that had fires or floods or whatever. So there was no labels, they just wrote on the top of the can. So it would say beans. And you didn't know whether it was green beans or baked beans. So it was a surprise when you opened it up. And hopefully you liked it, because if you didn't, you still had to eat it. And sometimes it would say stew, so you were so excited, and you would open it up, and you'd start eating it. And in my case, my cousin came along one day after school, and I was sitting there eating a can of stew, because I knew the word stew. Wow, this is pretty good. It's got chunks of potatoes in it, and carrots, and meat. And my cousin said to me, "What are you eating?" And of course, being protective, I said, "It's stew and it's mine. Right? You're not having it." Right? So I was trying to protect it from him. And he said, "Look, I got $5. I'll trade you." And $5, that was a lot of money, right? I could probably buy like 50 cans of stew. Because they were 10 cents a can, because you didn't know what was in it. Magical surprise. So So I said, give me the money first, because he was older than me and I didn't trust him, and he was bigger and stronger, so I knew he could take it back anytime he wanted, but I wanted to have it. So I took his $5 and I gave him my can of stew, and he smelled it. He said, it smells like stew. It's outpost stew, which was dog food. But it tasted good, because we were hungry. So I ate it. And he said, well, it doesn't kill the dog, so I'm sure you can eat it. So I gave him back his $5 and continued with my can of stew. The next day I opened up a can, but it thought it was tuna. It was tuna, but it was cat food. But you knew right away, because cat food does not taste good. So if you've never eaten cat food, don't try it. Believe me, it does not taste good. I don't know how cats eat it because there's little tiny bones in it. There's nothing worse than having fish with bones in it, right? Because I'm sure you've had fish, right? And when you find a bone, it disgusts you, right? You're like, oh my God, where did this come from? So cat food, do not try. But you can try elfo stew. It's good. And it doesn't kill the dogs. And it's cheap. Well, maybe not anymore. It was cheap back then. Add some mayonnaise, it tastes good. Or some mustard. And make sure you put it on white bread, not brown bread. Because then it won't taste good. So we went to the park and we were hungry one day and my brother decided we're going to have some goose today. I was 7 probably. My brother would have been 9. So he went and got the big fishing net and we jumped over the duck pond at High Park and he grabbed a goose with the net and then grabbed it and broke its neck. It's very graphic, so if you're offended, sorry. But it's a story and it's the truth. And he threw it over the fence and told me, start plucking it. Right? I'm 7 years old and I'm like, I don't know how to pluck the goose, right? Grab the feathers and yank them out. So I yanked them all out. I kept pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and I'm like, why aren't you helping? He said, I killed it. I did my job. I'm going to cook it. Okay, fair enough. So we got all the feathers pulled out of it, and we weren't quite sure how to process it, right? Like, what do you do with it after you have the feathers out? So we decided we'd just cut it open, take the insides out, throw it back to the duck pond, and barbecue it. So back then you could have a barbecue in the park, right? Well, we had barbecues because we stole everybody's barbecue grills that lived in the neighborhood. And we took them to High Park and hung them up in the trees. And then when we needed one, we would just be able to find one. We just look up and say, oh yeah, there's one up there. I mean, they used to come to our house and knock on the door and ask my grandmother, did anybody take your barbecue grill? We bought 3 already this month and they keep disappearing. So, which of course she'd go in the backyard and say, no, we got our grill. And she'd ask us, do you know anything about the barbecue grills? No. No, but I heard people are taking barbecue grills. Right? Because then we admitted that we knew they were gone. So we figured that would be okay. It's kind of like a half-truth, right? So we cut open this goose and my brother built a fire, got down one of the grills and we cooked the goose and we ate as much as we could eat. And how many of you ever had burlap bags as backpacks? Anybody? Besides me? Oh, somebody else. Yay! I'm not alone. We didn't have backpacks, right? Because they weren't around then, 50 years ago. Or if they did, we couldn't afford them, so we didn't even know about them. We had burlap bags that 50 pounds of potatoes came in. That was our backpack. And we just tied rope around it, and you hung it over your shoulder, and you went to the park with it. So we brought home more than half a goose, and we left it on the kitchen table and went to bed when the street lights came on. And my grandmother came home, and it was probably about 11:20 after 11 at night. And right away we heard the word, Ashton, which means come here in Cree. So we got up out of bed, we went in the kitchen, and my brother was always a smart ass, right? There's always somebody who's a smart ass in your family, right? Well, he was the smart ass. So we're standing there, 2 tired kids in our pajamas. What? What is this on the table? To which my brother, surprised, said, Cookum, don't you know? It's a goose. She wasn't really asking what was on the table. She was asking, how did it get there? And why was it on the kitchen table? And how come it was cooked? She knew what it was, but she wanted to know why it was there. So my brother said, we were hungry, so we went to the park and we killed the goose and we cooked it and we brought you home some so you would have some dinner. To which we were told, Children's Aid is going to come and get you. You keep doing this, Children's Aid is going to come and get you. And of course, we knew that was something to be afraid of. So a couple days goes by and my brother's like, I'm hungry. You hungry? I'm like, yeah. You want to open a can of something? No. What are we going to do? Let's go to the park. Oh, no, we're not allowed to go to the park. We can't get geese. Right? We're not allowed to. We're not going to kill a goose. Okay. Backpack, get the net. Oh, no, we're going fishing? Do I need the rod? No, we're not going fishing. What are we going to get? Just come on, get that stuff and get on your bike and let's go. So we get down to the park and I'm wondering what we're going to do, and we end up down at the duck pond again, right? What are we getting? We're getting ducks. Because we're not allowed to kill geese anymore. So of course we got a couple ducks and we did the same thing and we pulled all the feathers off, cut them open, barbecued them, took them home, left the duck on the table. 11:15, 11:20, we get called again. So out we go into the kitchen. What is it? What is this? To which my brother's feeling really brave. He stands there. Don't you know, Bookham? It's a duck. To which we got, I know it's a duck, but how did the duck get here? Well, we brought it there. Well, how did you get the duck? We went to Hyde Park. But how did you get a duck? Here's afraid, right? I was always the afraid one when I was small. I didn't want to do it, but he made me do it, and we went down to the park, she made me kill the goose, so he killed the goose and the ducks and everything, and I just pulled the feathers. I'm the feather puller, right? I'm not the killer. So it's okay. You killed the duck. But why? Because we're hungry. Oh, okay. So it was okay to kill the duck. But don't do it again, because Children's Aid going to come and get you. Okay. A few more days go by, we're hungry again. Now my brother asked me to get the broom pole, and the duct tape, and the net, and the bag. Thinking, what are we doing with the broom pole, the duct tape, the net, and the bag? Until I seen him coming down the stairs with his knife. Okay, what are we going to get now? We're going to the park because we're hungry. What are we going to get? We're going to get beaver. Oh no. I never killed a beaver before. I've never even seen a beaver before in real life. I know about them, but I've never seen them. So often we go to the park and we sat there for hours, waiting in the area where there's a little waterfall. Waiting, and no beaver. So we went home, we were hungry. We had to open up cans of food, so we ate that. Next day, we're back in the park again with all our hunting equipment. A broom pole, duct tape, a knife, a bag, and a net. We sit there again, waiting. A couple days went by of doing this, and finally, my brother pipes up, I see it. So he tapes the knife on the end of the pole, has some string, wraps it around his wrist, spears the beaver, and brings it in. I was amazed because he has really good aim. He's never hunted beaver before. Like, yeah, you got it. Now we have it, we don't know what to do. My brother's like, pull the fur off. Doesn't work. Don't try to pull fur off beavers, it doesn't work. It's not like geese or ducks. So we didn't know what to do with this beaver. It's got to be about 25 pounds. So here's a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old with a 25-pound dead beaver, not knowing what to do with it, and not knowing how to get the fur off of it. So what do? We bring it home. Put it on the kitchen table. How many of you ever had arborite tables, or have seen arborite tables? They're usually blue with shiny silver legs and silver around them.
The 50s table.
Yeah, the 50s tables.
The family table.
And you pull them out and you put an extra piece in it to make it bigger for your family. Not thinking we have a dead beaver, we put it right on the arborite table, not even on a bag or anything else. A dead beaver. And we just thought, we'll leave it there. When our grandmother comes home, she'll know what to do with it. And for sure she's going to call us because it's a dead animal on the table. So sure enough, she woke us up, but then she told us, come out here, but leave your pajamas in there, just come out in your underwear. And we're thinking, oh, we're going to get a spanking or something, right? Why are we not coming out in our pajamas? We get out there and she said, what is this on the table? And of course, my smart-ass brother, all proud again, cook 'em, it's a beaver, don't you know? She's like, I know it's a beaver, I can see it, it's not even cooked. Why is this on the table? We said, well, we didn't know what to do with it. She's like, you see what's under the table? We look under the table, big puddle of blood. That's why we had to, what? Wrap it up? Why didn't you just say wrap it up? So, we had to clean up the blood under the table, which is why we couldn't have our pajamas on, because otherwise they'd have to bleach our pajamas. So she told us that in the morning when we woke up, we wouldn't be hungry for the next 3 days, because she took her time to skin the beaver there and teach us how to skin the beaver at 11 o'clock at night, and how to season the beaver and put it in the oven. When we woke up the next morning, we had fresh cooked beaver and fresh homemade bread. So we grew up in a stage like that, where you learn from other people. You learn the survival skills that you need in life. And the reason why I wanted to tell you this story is because a lot of people don't have skills anymore when it comes to survival. We've become so dependent on today's modern conveniences that if the electricity ever goes off, we will totally be lost. No one will be able to phone anybody because they don't know the phone numbers because they're programmed in their phones, right? Nobody will know that if you flush a toilet, water won't come up because it's run by pumps. You won't be able to go to gas stations because that's run by pumps. So the important lesson behind this is to always remember the older ways and always remember ways of survival, because that's what's going to carry you through these future times, because we're living in a time now where there's so many people and the infrastructure has not been updated. So try and get survival skills. You have Google, we call it Grandma Google, on your phones. Go and look at YouTube and find out survival skills, because you really need to learn hunting skills, fishing skills, knowing where to hunt, where to fish, if the water's clean, and how to prepare these foods. And don't wait till you bring it home and put it on your kitchen table and have somebody tell you what is it. Okay, so learn it beforehand. So I have to wrap it up, so I'll leave you with that, and we will be back up later to sing you a couple songs. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and I hope there's some lessons in it for you to learn. So if not, come and see me afterwards and I'll explain it in more detail. Okay? Thanks for listening. Hard to see up here. Sorry about that. Yep.
You okay, Lou?
Yep. I'm good now. I'm down on solid ground.